So a couple things that you need to have in your introduction. You need an attention getter like any good essay has. The introduction should also introduce the things that you are comparing and make it clear to the reader what's valuable about comparing these two things. And the points of comparison should be evident somewhere in the introduction as well. And the thesis may be in the introduction. The reason I say maybe is because you can be creative with this essay if you are writing a predominantly narrative essay where you're going to tell two stories. You may want to save your thesis for the end as kind of a reflection on those two stories. But you can put it in the beginning as well. And avoid having your introduction sound too speechy. And by what I mean by that is telling the reader what you're going to tell them. I am going to compare two things. These are the points of comparison. This is the value of comparing these things. You want to be really short and clear when you're giving a verbal speech, but when you're writing, you want to reveal these things rather than make announcements about what you're doing. And that takes some practice, but try to do that. Okay, let's now look at the body. So you have two choices in organizing the body of your essay, and one is to use what's called the divided or subject by subject or block style. All depends on which grammar book you're looking at. And what you're going to do here is write everything about one culture first. If you have one culture and you are going to write about food, festivals, and art, then you will probably have a paragraph about Hmong food, Hmong festivals, Hmong art. Then you move on to the second part of your essay and you write everything about the second culture, Italian food, Italian festivals, Italian art. In the second section where you're writing about the second culture, here's where you can begin doing some comparing and contrasting. You can do that within the text where you're talking about the second culture, or you can, at the end of both of your big block sections, you can do a separate analysis and do your compare contrast in that separate paragraph. Another organizational pattern you can use is alternating point by point pattern. And here you organize your essay by using the points of comparison as the major organizational blocks of the essay. So you'll take your first paragraph, and let's say that's your paragraph about food. And you are going to have a paragraph about food, and you're going to include both Hmong food and Italian food, and then do your compare and contrast within that paragraph. Then you move to your second point of comparison, which was festivals. And you are going to, at the same time, talk about Hmong festivals, Italian festivals, and do your compare and contrast remarks. Same thing for the third section. I recommend for this essay, because it is short, that you use the first method, the block method, where you write all about one culture and then all about another, and then make your compare and contrast. And the reason I recommend that is because with this second method, you end up with a lot of little paragraphs and perhaps not a lot of content in each paragraph. So consider that, but the decision is yours. Then let's look at the conclusion. And in the conclusion, you want to reinforce your thesis or perhaps introduce it for the first time. If you have introduced it in the introduction, reword it here so that it doesn't sound repetitious, and conclude with a memorable closing thought. One real elegant way to open and close your essay is to begin with an example or story in the introduction and then conclude by referring to that same example or story in the end. So consider doing that. And then the last page of your paper, the works cited page, which by the way is not in the page limits, is going to be, of course, that works cited page. You've done this before in your last research paper. Follow the MLA format example on page 475 of your Rules for Writers textbook. And remember all of those picky little things about alphabetizing, indenting correctly, double spacing, and using works cited as the title. And I just noticed on my slide here, I have works in small letters, and that should have been a capital letter. So that is the basics on organizing this essay. And I have attached a document from Lumen Learning that shows visually how these two organizational patterns work. It's got a graphic in it, and so you may want to take a look at that to see if that's helpful at all.